Week 7, Module 8.01, Samples and Inferencing. How do you make a prediction valid for a population based on the sample? So in our warm-up, we're going to read the paragraph and fill in the table. Statistics deal with collecting, organizing, and interpreting data. A survey is a method of collecting information. The group being studied is the population. Sometimes the population is very large, and to save time, money, and part of the group is called a sample. So these are bold printed, but you can go ahead and underline those. So we're looking here for these two surveys, and we want to determine what set is represented. Is it the population, or is it representing the sample? So dress code change is the survey topic. Set A are the students in a middle school. Set B are the 7th grade students in the middle school. So when we're talking about the population, it is the group that's being studied. So the whole group. This is our population, the middle school. And set B are the 7th graders in the middle school. That's only a small portion. This would be a sample. Favorite flavors of ice cream. So we have the customers at an ice cream shop in the town, or the residents of a town. So when we're talking about the smaller group here, this is our sample. And then the population of the town are all of its residents. So when we're using these groups, we can make a prediction using ratios and percentages. So we can use the results of a survey or past actions to predict the actions of a larger group, and this is where we're going to be using these ratios. Since the ratios of the responses of a good sample are often the same as the ratios of the response of the population. The students in Mr. Blackwell's class brought photos of their summer break. The table shows how many students brought each type of photo, and we can see where we have beach, campground, home, and theme park. And then these are the students, and they each brought one. So if you total these up, we get 28 photos from the students, the 28 students. So what is the probability that a student brought a photo taken at the beach? Well, there were 6 out of the 28. And if we convert that and we take 6 divided by 28, it's going to be approximately, because it's going to, I think, be an irrational number. It comes out to about 21.4% of the students that brought a beach photo. So we want to predict the school as a whole. And this really isn't a very good sample, but it is a sample of the students in the school. So there are 560 students at the school. Predict how many students would bring a photo taken at the beach. So we're looking at that ratio of 6:28. Knowing that this rounds off to 21.4 and this actually continues on, it's more accurate to use that 6 out of 28 to make our prediction. And we can take that 6/28 and we can simplify it and take 3/14. And we want to multiply that times the 560 students. Sorry. 3 times 560, 14 times 1. When you divide it, you're going to get 120 students. All right. You don't have to simplify before you multiply. You could even simplify here, but it makes it a little bit easier. This will come out a lot larger. So looking at biased and unbiased samples, To get a valid result, a sample must be chosen very carefully. An unbiased sample is selected so that it accurately represents the entire population. 2 ways to pick an unbiased sample are listed below. And here's our key word, and this is what you're going to hear in Florida Virtual. We have simple random sample and systematic random sample. They're not going to use simple or systematic. They're just going to tell you it's random. However, so that we know what we're looking at, the simple random sample is like writing everybody's name on a piece of paper in a class, put it in a bowl, and pick without looking. So it's as likely to choose one name out of that hat or bowl as any other. The systematic random sample is where you're picking people according to a specific time or time interval. Like, for instance, here that every 20th person is chosen from an alphabetical list of all the students attending a school. All right, so taking a look at our example here, and we're going to be looking at what type of sample is this. A TV programming manager wants to conduct a survey to determine which reality TV show is the favorite of viewers in a certain area. So we're talking about like a town or county or state, and he's considering these 3 samples. The first one is 100 people that are trying out for a reality TV show, 100 students at your middle school, and every 100th person at a shopping mall. Well, when we're looking here, if there are only people showing up that are trying out for a reality show, they're going to be looking at just that type of reality show. Sample 2, 100 students at our school. So, while 100 students at our school doesn't represent a population as a whole, because it's only middle school students. It's not younger students, older students, parents, grandparents. So these 2 are not unbiased. Every 100th person at a shopping mall. So this one is going to be our random sample. This every 100th person. And this sample is unbiased because it is a systematic random sample. And it's not just a random sample of, let's say, the students or reality show tryout folks, but it's of a larger or large population. So a biased sample, which is one or more parts of the population that are favored over others. 2 ways to pick a biased sample are listed below. We have convenience sample and a voluntary response sample. So just in general, a convenience sample is like if we were to just survey my math class out of an entire school. So one 7th grade math class is not a good representation of the entire school. A voluntary response is where you take a sample of people, part of the population, a sample that just want to respond. And sometimes those surveys will come in like QR codes, or it could be that you get something in response. You get something for your response, like let's say gift certificate or coupon or something of that nature. So a radio station asks, here in this problem, its listeners to indicate their preference for one of 2 candidates in an upcoming election. 72% of their listeners who responded preferred candidate A. So the radio station announced that candidate A would win the election. Is this conclusion valid? And justify your answer. So we know that 72% of this radio station's listeners who decided that they were going to respond preferred candidate A. Is this a good sample? Well, to me this sounds like this is a voluntary response, so it's not valid because it's only made up of the radio station's listeners. And that being said, I mean, it could be that it's an oldie goldie radio station where people like 70 and older are listening. It could be an R&B or country station. Who knows? It could be just talk radio. So it's not a good sample of a large population where we're looking at an election. That would be, it doesn't say if it's a local election really or state, national election. We don't know. It's just the responding to this candidate A. Any which way, it's not a good response because it is a I'm pointing up here and you can't see it. It's a voluntary response. It's just who wants to call in. So we put voluntary response. Using a sample to predict. A valid sampling method uses an unbiased sample. If a sampling method is valid, you can make a generalization about the population. And you're going to see that these are going to be our random type of samples. So here we have Zach, who is trying to decide which of the 3 golf courses is the best. He randomly surveyed people at a sports store and recorded the results in the table. Is the sample method valid? If so, suppose Zach surveyed 150 more people. How many people would be expected to vote for Rolling Meadows? So is it valid? Well, because we have random here, we're going to say yes. And in Florida Virtual, you're just going to be looking for random sampling. But this one is a simple random because it doesn't say every 10th person or 20th person. So this is just a simple random. And it's a sample from a sports store. It wouldn't make sense if he just went to a grocery store. Here he's going to find people that are looking for sporting equipment. Next, what % of golfers prefer Rolling Meadows? Which here we're looking at all of the votes for Whispering Trails, Tall Pines, Rolling Meadows, and if I add this up, it's 25 people that were surveyed. And then we're going to use this to make a prediction. So what % of the golfers? Well, I know that is, from Rolling Meadows, is 7 out of 25. And then how much of that is out of 100? 25 times 4 is 100. 7 times 4 is 28. So that's 28%. So we're looking for 28% of, if he surveyed 150, and this is what you're going to have to do in Florida Virtual, is figure out the % of a number to predict how many would prefer, in this case, Rolling Meadows. So when you solve this, remember you can just move the decimal 2 to the left, and you're going to take 0.28 times 150, and you would get 42. Try it out yourself. So 42 out of the 150 to be surveyed would probably prefer Rolling Meadows. So here, a survey uses a blank to predict a result of a population. So we're looking at what type of survey? I'm not spelling it right. We're going to use a random sample. And you can also put here an unbiased sample. Both of those will work. So if you have any questions from week 7, just email me, or you can message me through my Google number. Let me know specifically what your questions are, and just please read carefully, because a lot of this, the errors that I've seen thus far are just from really not reading into what the question is asking, and then also what the answer is giving. All right? Good luck.